And I know there's only 6 at the moment, but please stay. I would appreciate it. I'll try to make this session pretty easy. So just real quick, um, to explain, I'm sure you probably read my notes. Yesterday, uh, as we get ready for class, I got quite a few notes. Hey, what are we going to do for class? Are we going to cancel? Are we going to do it? And I kind of waited for an administration announcement, throughout the day. Finally, around 7:30 or so, I thought, well, I guess we're going to go ahead with classes. But there was no way, with the way things were, that I was going to hold class anyway. I thought, regardless, even if classes continued, we're going to do Zoom. And so, right when I was posting Zoom, President Rogers announced that classes were canceled in the morning. Since I'd already posted the Zoom and, frankly, didn't want to lose a day, I said, we're just going to go ahead with Zoom. So I'm recording this session. Like I said, there's only about 6 people here. I decided not to record it 3 times or have it 3 times. So this will be recorded for later, but appreciate you being here. It's a little bit easier doing this for a live audience. So I will post it later. We're not going to cover this at any other point, but we'll go through it. So you guys will get some extra help for being here, hopefully. And thanks for coming. We'll see if anybody else joins or not. But again, I appreciate you being on here. So as the slide says, and I need a little bit of feedback. Can you guys hear? I guess number one, can everyone hear me okay? I want to make sure it's recording at a good volume, or do I need to turn my volume up a little bit? Okay, all good. Thank you. And everyone can see the screen that says snow day equals Zoom day. Same thing. Everyone can see that. All
Yes,
right.
we can see it. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. I was going to have some breakouts and everything, but we probably won't do that. We'll just probably go through the presentation. But again, guys, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. It's, yeah. And hopefully you're not too frozen. All right. So let's go ahead and, I got to get onto this screen here. Move on down. So we're covering the second half of chapter 1. We did that last time. As a real quick review, remember the 5 component framework. And again, guys, please jump in at any point if for some reason technically you're not seeing my presentation or whatever. I can be a little awkward with Zoom sometimes. So last time, the main thing we covered was the 5 component framework, which was people, process, data, software, and hardware. We're going to be using that throughout the whole semester. And so just remember that. Remember that. Remember that. There's not a ton of things to remember about this part of the course, but this is one that I would like you to remember. And software and hardware could sometimes be called technology, and sometimes you might see procedure, but those are the 4 or 5 basics. Okay. And there's my amazing AI slide. Also, last time, click on here, go back. We did a bunch of exercises on the 5 component process. So hopefully you remember those. I'm posted all the PowerPoints out there. In the past, I did a little bit of PDF posting, but now I've been told for accessibility for students that we need to post PowerPoints. So going forward, I'll be posting these. They may vary a little bit, but by the time we're done with the chapter, all the slides you need will be posted out there. So at some points, I do make changes. But after today, the slides are out there already, but the slides that you need and the final post will be out there today, and you can use these to study off of, and frankly should, because the core stuff we're covering in this chapter is in this deck. Okay, I'll fly through this. So let's get into this is new stuff now. So now we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and a few other things that are in the chapter. So every company has a strategy. It's the plan for how business will succeed. So you have to answer questions like, who are we going to serve? And like, who are our customers? What do we offer? What kind of products or services? How do we compete? What products do we make? Where do we invest our money? How we use our resources? So in a company, you want to have a strategy so that everybody is working towards the same goal. And there's different levels of strategy. We won't go into all the details, but you have your corporate strategy, you have your business unit strategy, you have your operations and administrative strategy. So depending on the level, it's different levels of strategy. But the big question is what is the MIS role in strategy? And frankly, the role in strategy is really the purpose of MIS. And the purpose of MIS is or why does MIS exist? It turns strategy into action. Okay. So MIS, Management Information Systems, is the enabler, right? MIS exists so that a company can have its strategy, um, it can make it come to pass. So what does an MIS strategy do? It provides the way for a company to design products, to market products, to sell products, to deliver to customers. It builds all the systems that supports each of these strategic steps. A strategy is nothing without MIS. Now, in the past, before we had automation, there were manual steps that are done, but today with automation, every company uses computer software and hardware, but coupled with people, process, and data to enable strategy. So that's why we have it, right? It's practical. It enables. It allows us to take orders, to track inventory, to manage our customers, and then it allows us to report results to managers, but also to stakeholders, to everybody. And that's why I say, right, when you go to work, if you're going to work at a company like Dana, if you're going to work at a company, and I worked there for 7 years, or Owens, Illinois, or Marathon, or I worked at Cargill, you pick it. Any large company, you're going to be using an MIS because your job is to implement the strategy, and you will be using it as a tool, right? It won't be everything you do. You'll do a lot of other things, but a good portion of your day, your week, your month, and your year, to quote a friend's song, will be using MIS. Okay, so that's why it exists. All right, so we're going to give you a couple of examples of this. I mean, hopefully you know about the company Netflix. So I was going to ask the class if we were live, who uses Netflix? If you guys want to raise your hand, you give me a little feedback, you can. But I'm assuming most of you do, although you might say, no, we're an HBO or this or that. But hopefully everybody is familiar with the company Netflix. So let's kind of talk about how MIS enables Netflix. So on the right, or on the left, I put together my version of what their strategy is. Like, and for all these examples, don't get me wrong, I'm not like privy, unless I work there, to their strategy, but it's pretty easy to see what their strategy is as you watch and look and see. And so I put together, Professor H's version of what their strategy is, right? They're delivering demand entertainment to people's homes by offering, a huge selection of movies and shows, original content. I mean, that was a huge part of their strategy. Before, you guys probably haven't been around long enough, but initially streaming for Netflix was just a conflict that already, or not conflict, content that already existed. But pretty soon they started investing in shows. I mean, Stranger Things is a good example, right? That's unique to Netflix, and so that's part of their strategy. In addition to showing movies that were in the theaters and TV shows, they would have their own content. They also wanted to have they want to have a personalized viewing experience for each customer. You get recommendations. This is what you should watch. You should feel like you're watching when you want, at the time you want, etc. And they definitely want to keep their customers subscribed. That's a big issue these days, right? I mean, I do the same thing. I'll watch Netflix for a month or two and say, wow, I'm not going to keep paying this, and I'll move on. But regardless, their strategy is trying to keep you engaged, keeping you staying there, wanting more content. Okay. So the question becomes then, what does MIS do for this strategy? And so say MIS enables that strategy. And again, this is my answer. It could be different. And again, who knows? I don't work at Netflix, but it does do global streaming. And like I said, the way they implement it is through personalization. They provide systems that analyze your behavior and recommend shows each user or you is likely to enjoy. Whenever I log in, I see, to Netflix, I see, hey, you watch this show, you might enjoy that show, right? And it gives you, the ability to decide what new shows to create or buy. I'm always seeing previews, sometimes that I don't want to see, but so what? And part of their strategy too is, at first it was and different streaming services have challenges with this, but they wanted to make sure that you could see that on any TV, phone, tablet, laptop, or device. And don't underestimate that. To do that is very, very difficult to do, right? And so that's, part of their strategy. Another thing I didn't put on here, and actually I found this out from my son, so it's kind of interesting, is that they want to do this quickly. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Netflix is replicated on satellites. My son worked for SpaceX, and they've replicated Netflix content on satellites in the air to get it to you quicker. So some of the content that you're watching may be being streamed from satellites, and they've done some interesting things with technology to get that to you. But bottom line is the strategy there is on the left. MIS is what you're going to be doing. The systems that personalize, the systems that help you do the content, the systems that store the content, um, and the ability at any time, anywhere. Okay, so that's what MIS does. There's only 8, 9 of you, but I'm going to give you guys a minute to think about this, and I'm going to give you an example and have you give it some thought. And if you want to be brave enough to answer, I hope you will. It'll make it a little bit better. We won't spend as much time as we would have in class. But here's 2 examples, and I put 2 strategies down here. And I'll probably do most of the talking, but choose either one. In fact, anyone whose name is last name ends in A through M, hopefully that's a couple of you. Actually, just pick the one you're most familiar with. Pick either Costco or McDonald's. Look at the strategy, and then just try to come up with 1 or 2 things that they use technology for to enable that strategy. So I'm going to give you probably a minute or 2 to do that. Those who are watching online, please do the same. I mean, it'll be or watching through recording, please do the same. Just take a minute or 2 to scribble down. And again, I'm not expecting you're an expert on Costco or McDonald's, but hopefully you're writing right now. Like, think of the systems. Like, when you go into McDonald's, what systems do you see, or what systems do you know they have? How does MIS enable that strategy? Okay. I'm going to not give you a ton of time, but maybe 30 seconds or so. And then we'll move on. And in class, we would have had all of you working together in groups of 3 or 4, because we don't want to just have me lecturing for the whole time. All right, that's probably good enough. Anybody want to raise their hand and guess? Be brave. Like I said before, it's okay if you get a wrong answer. But let's start with Costco. Hopefully, maybe someone who's a member of Costco. Can you think of any system or any MIS they're using to enable strategy? I don't see any raised hands. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So Costco, here's our strategy. I'm just going to hit the big. I mean, they have a bunch of stuff you probably wouldn't know about their systems, but the big one you should know about is everybody has a Costco card. When I go into Costco in Perrysburg, I have to have my card. That card is key to their system. It tracks you as a customer. It tracks me as a customer. Everything I ever buy at Costco is on there. When I want to go do a return, I have to have bought that item with my Costco card. One time I tried to return a gift that was given to me, and I couldn't because it wasn't bought on my Costco card. That's probably a weakness. And they said, sorry, it has to be returned by the person who bought it. Maybe they've changed that. But everything I bought at Costco, and I don't know how far back it goes, maybe to the beginning of time, is on that card. I have the executive membership. So at the end of the year or at the end of the period, they send me a check that I can use at Costco. That's based on my purchases. I get a certain percentage. I also have the Costco Visa card. But basically, Costco knows all of my spending patterns that I'm doing at Costco. And frankly, since I have the Costco Visa card, they probably know all of my other spending outside of Costco on that card, which is a huge amount of information which they can use to market, right? So that's part of their strategy, right? In fact, I should have walked through the strategy. Their strategy is a limited selection of high quality products, high volume sales with low margins, a membership model that builds loyalty and trust. That's part of the customer card system it's enabled. Simple stores that focus on efficiency, not variety, keeping low costs. So all those strategy pieces, they enable through their card system. They have a great sales tracking system. They definitely have supplier coordination. They're rarely out of stock, and they have amazing pricing discipline, right? They want to make sure that the prices are consistent across stores. And when they have to get rid of something, you'll see a little star on the cards and it gets sold quickly. We even kind of go over there and watch sometimes. I'll let you know some little secrets, like right before Christmas, the Christmas candy and chocolate, like Christmas Eve, oftentimes will go from $20 or $19.99 or whatever it is down to even $3.99 or $2.99, so they can get rid of it. But all that is able to be done because of their MIS systems. So the strategy Costco has, which you see on the left, is enabled by MIS systems. Make sense? Any questions from anyone of our 9 folks? Please ask. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's go to McDonald's. Everybody's been to McDonald's. Everybody has an idea what their strategy is, I hope, just because hopefully, well, not all of you, but many of you as kids have gone there. They want to deliver fast, consistent, affordable food. It may not be the best food, right? Quality actually isn't really part of, they're not trying to be the highest quality. Go to Five Guys or my favorite Shake Shack, but it's going to be the same, right? Anywhere you go, you're going to get the same little hamburger, the same Big Mac. It's standard. The menu is pretty standardized worldwide. Now, I must add that there is a lot of variations. They do allow for variations by country and locations. You'll go there and they'll have McRibs and local delicacies. But definitely across the U.S., it's pretty standardized. And even across the world, you can get a Big Mac everywhere. You usually get a quarter pounder, and it's the same kind of feel. They want to be fast. They want to be consistent, global scale. And so you always have the same familiar customer experience wherever you go. And I see it there everywhere. A lot of times I go to, I don't really like McDonald's, but honestly, I probably go to McDonald's more when I travel overseas, just to see what they're doing, just to see the variations. And honestly, some of the food quality is much better in other countries. Like France has a pretty amazing McDonald's. They have crepes and nice desserts there. So it does vary, but by and large, you're still getting the same McDonald's experience. So what does MIS do? Well, they provide a point of sale system. This is pretty new, really. You didn't have as much now, but they're now shifting to you don't even talk to the counter folks. When I go to the airport or I see the airports in Detroit, there's really not a lot of counter folks, but these big screens you can order on. And that's becoming de facto. All of that is MIS, right? And those systems are hooked up to kitchen systems, which allow them to cook the right kind of food. They are what we call a make to stock system primarily, which means they cook it in advance. Make to order is when they wait for you to put an order in. That's what you'll see over at Culver's, right? They don't start cooking my burger until in the drive-through I say, here's my burger. That's why I always have to wait. Their strategy is to have higher quality through fresh. McDonald's is we're going to try to anticipate it, and if we can have it pre-cooked and it's and maybe it's only sat there for half an hour or an hour, it'll be there. That's why when you give one of the less used order items, sometimes you have to wait because it's not pre-cooked. But in theory, if you order a Big Mac, fries, I shouldn't say a shake, but a Coke because the shake machines break, they should be able to get it to you really, really fast because it should be pre-cooked unless they're just swamped. But the systems are what enables that. The systems help the kitchen coordinate and do that work, help them get the ingredients in. So hopefully they're not saying, hey, we don't have any fries today, right? If they ran out of fries, that's pretty, crazy. And sometimes I've seen it happen at restaurants. Not that I go to McDonald's very much anymore, but when I took my kids there, I have 6 of them. They never ran out, right? Maybe they might run out of the Happy Meal, but that was going to, the toy, that might happen. But they would, had great systems to make sure that they had things in place. So that's their strategy, and that's what their MISs are trying to do. So the point, again, I'm trying to make is business strategy is enabled by MIS with these examples. Okay. All right. And here's the final slide. I hope you like the Atlas picture. So there's MIS holding up the company's business strategy, right? The strategy is not defined by MIS. I mean, they might have some input into it, and they might say, hey, we could do some amazing things if we had this strategy, but you can't run a company just with strategy. MIS is the ones that turn it into working capabilities, most of them. I'm not saying others don't help with that too, but the MISs carry the weight of the execution. And the one point I want to make, though, too, and you don't see it as much, but you do, which is we don't just have technology for technology's sake. If you're just thinking, hey, they're the ones that give us laptops, well, they only give laptops if having laptops is part of the strategy. Or they supply the internet. Well, they only supply the internet if it can enable the strategy. And if we don't need the internet, which someday may happen, then MIS won't provide the internet because it's not part of the strategy. But obviously it is. So the reason MIS systems are there and are provided is so that the company can execute the strategy. That's the goal. Okay. All right. That was kind of abrupt, but now I'm switching to the next one is I want you to think now, my position, my thing is that everybody in a company, everybody uses MIS. And I wish I had a whole room of 100 people here. And if anyone's brave enough to think of one, your goal right now, and I want you to stop and think, at a big company, I'm not talking about a pop-up on the corner with lemonade where they're doing things and writing, sales down and have a cash box. But if you're in a fairly large company, I'd say maybe over 100 people, even less than that sometimes, is there anybody at that company that's not using an MIS system? Now, remember, MIS is Management Information Systems, and it can be many different things, but you're using some form of MIS. It may not be the ERP or SAP one, but is there anyone who's not using an MIS at a large company? And I would say no, but your challenge right now is, can you think of a role that might? So I'll give you like 30 seconds or so. 15. People here on this call, can any of you think of one? Anyone brave enough? Braden or Grace or Mason, you want to call one out? If not, it's okay. All right. You didn't, but I'll tell you what people normally say. They'll say, you know what? The janitor, the janitor doesn't, right? Or something along the lines. And I say, well, good answer, but a janitor has to get a paycheck, right? And so they're going to be clocking into the system saying, hey, we're here to get our paycheck. And so they'll typically clock in to an MIS so their time can be recorded. And even more so, you say, well, okay, maybe they use an old time clock. But even if they don't do that, a janitor is typically going to get their work routine. Like today is Tuesday. Here's the area we clean, and we're gonna, and so they'll have some kind of report or something on a pad say you need to go clean the restrooms, and here's your responsibility. If they do the same thing every shift, maybe it's going to be the same thing. You clean the restrooms for the whole building, or you're going to clean the floors in the break room, or whatever you're going to be doing, whatever you're going to be cleaning. But that's all going to come from the MIS. And the MIS is going to make sure, or should make sure, that the building gets cleaned on a regular basis. Maybe you don't clean everything on the same night. Maybe you rotate it on the different nights. Who knows? But all that information that they need is going to come through the MIS. Now, granted, they may not be given tablets to do it. It might even just be a printout they're given, but everybody uses an MIS. Accounting does their work in an MIS. Managers are going to spend time there doing plans, reviewing reports. HR is going to be processing people who are onboarding into the company through an MIS. If they're leaving, getting fired, or whatever you want to call it, it's through an MIS. So everybody is using an MIS, my opinion. And if anyone wants to try to get extra credit later, if you can come up with an answer and either now or later, you can, that'd be great. But so far in my semesters, I haven't found anyone yet. In my experience, everybody is typically using an MIS. That's what we're learning about it. So you need to learn it too. And honestly, the entry level and middle people probably use it the most. I mean, as you get more senior, you spend more time on relationships and directing people. You'll still use the MIS, but not as much. But when you start in a company, you're going to probably spend quite a bit of time doing analysis, doing reports, running things through an MIS. So this course should hopefully get you familiar with those. Okay. So yeah, here was a challenge that we didn't do. I should have got my animation there, but that was a challenge. So every job, we did the group challenge. You cannot, come with a role in a company that does not use information systems. I say you cannot. There's not a role that does not use MIS in a modern company. Everyone uses MIS. So the answer, there is no role in a modern company. All right. Next. What is this picture? Take a minute and guess. No fair going to the internet. And again, I wish I had a live audience because I get all kinds of different answers. They're moving a piano. What's going on here? But if you look closely, you'll see some things that give you a clue. I'll be quiet for a second. Ah, a computer. Excellent. Thank you, Taylor. And excellent. But say more on that. You use the clues that are there. So you're on the right track. If you want to give a little bit more, and thank you, by the way, for that. That's on track, and you can probably see the clue: IBM Data Processing Division. This is definitely not 2020. Want to add to that, but I like the computer answer. Well, this is last chance. Okay, here we go. This is 1956. The item weighs almost a ton, 2,000 pounds. It costs $160,000 then, or about 1.3 million in today's dollars. It can only be transported on a truck or plane. It's an IBM product. Today, to make that same product would cost you, so 0.01 would be a penny. So I think it's a thousandth of a cent to make it. That's how much it costs to make this same product today. It cost 1.3 million then. It is the first hard drive, a 5 megabyte hard drive. At that time, this could have stored one MP3 song, or 66 emails, or 2 to 3 pictures, or 5 spreadsheets, if we had spreadsheets or if we had that format. But that's the size of a hard drive back then to store one song. And say, whoa, that was in 1956. Let's compare that to today then. Today, so I took the 1956 IBM hard drive and said, today, in 2025, and this is probably getting older now because I made this slide a semester or two ago, and it's probably already out of date. You can get a thumb drive, right? That little thumb drive on the right, okay? Thumb drive can hold 64 gigabytes. And this is 7 years of progress. So 12,800 times more storage, right? And it's way smaller. It's going to weigh 0.3 of an ounce, 0.02 pounds. So it's 100,000 times lighter. It costs you about $5. That price has probably gone down. About 12,800 songs, 21,000 pictures, 40 full movies, 64,000 sheets. And like I said, honestly, it probably does even more than that today, right? So what's going on? What happened in those 70 years? Why did we need something like that in 1956? And now in 2025, we can just put it on a thumb drive or even more. And you say, well, it's technology, but there is an explanation for this. There's a law, and it's called Moore's Law. Okay? I want you to know that. This is like common knowledge for everyone. Hopefully you've heard of it before. If you haven't, you're going to know about it today. It's called Moore's Law. What is Moore's Law? In 1965, he identified it. And by the way, the law is just recognizing something that's happening. It's not like it was legislated, not like someone said it's going to happen. But basically, he said the number of transistors per square inch on an integrated chip is going to double every 18 months. In reality, it's about closer to every 2 years. And so if you look at this graph that I have here, it goes back to 1970, right? 1970, it shows the transistor count being about 1,000. If we come here to, I think I just found a graph going to 2020, but it keeps going this way anyway. If I go look at 2020, this is 50 billion, I think. I get it mixed up. That would be 50 million. Yeah, 50 billion, where we had 1,000 before, right? So it's going off the roof. It's just taking off. Every 2 years or so, we get more. And because of that, technology improving, it means we can do things we couldn't do before, right? So, what does it mean? It means, in this case, here we go. It means an increase of 50 million times the computing power is what it does. 50 million times. What can you do with all of that? What does that mean? What's the ramification of that law? Well, it means that technology is almost free, right? I mean, there is a cost, but oh my goodness, because of that, a lot of this technology is getting close to being free or being able to store the data, right? So we got Gordon Moore. Yeah, here's more on his law. He co-founded Intel, did the law. How do companies use it? Why does it matter? This exponential growth has fueled the information age. It's why we're able to do a bunch of things, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. The question is it still true today? The pace may be slowing a little bit, but Moore's Law is still influencing us, and it's why we have AI today. AI is now here because of Moore's Law. The computing capacity that we're able to have on the chips, on the NVIDIA chips, That's a manifestation of Moore's law. They were able to create chips that could pack more information onto a chip, and therefore we have AI, thanks to Moore's law. So I just put out here a bunch of few, you say, well, what is the ramification of that? All of these companies on the right, if we were still had the computing power of IBM in 1950s and 70s, or even if it only had doubled maybe every 10 years or 20 years, we would not have any of this. There would be no Uber, there'd no Netflix, no Zillow, no automated Wall Street Journal, no automated cars, Kindle, all the things that we have out there. You can see a bunch of icons. Those are all powered by the fact that we have increased computing capacity. Um, Without those, they wouldn't. Their business models are all resting on Moore's law in the information age, right? And like I said, with AI, I don't know how far back it would go, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but the AI we have today couldn't have worked until we reached the point where the chips were good, and that was just a couple years ago. Um, so all of these are thanks to Moore's law. So I go in here, let's just do a quick case study of that. We'll just take one company. Let's take Kindle. So before Kindle, and this is me, so I've lived through all of this. When I was younger, I loved books. I can remember being 10, 11, 12 years old, and I used to shop at Gemco. And in fact, I had a series I liked called The Three Investigators. Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators. The kids solved mysteries. They lived in a junkyard, and books would get released every couple months. It was kind of like the Hardy Boys, but I thought they were better. And I had to wait days or weeks or months for them, for the book to be in stock. I would go to Gemco, and it wasn't there, wasn't there, wasn't there, and finally it would show up, right? And the new ones that would come out, there was a series, and as soon as volume 11 or 12 came out, there were other guys like me, and it might sell out, and I have to wait for it to come back. Sometimes I could buy it by mail, and it would be delivered, and there were niche places, but basically it took a long time. And if I had the book, I had to carry it in my bag, right? That's how it used to be before Kindle. With Kindle now, I have thousands of books in the cloud. I still buy books, but very few. And we've moved a lot. And oh my goodness, moving those books was hard. And slowly I'm giving them away. And I still do like to read books. But honestly, now whenever I want to buy a book, I just tap it and instantly I have it on my machine. I'll say, oh, there's a new New York Times book. Tap it and it's on my machine, right? It's in the cloud. Books cost less than a cup of coffee, right? I mean, it's not much. Sometimes I don't know why they do it. They like to charge the same amount for a hard copy as a Kindle copy, which I always scratch my head. But the really good ones, you can get the hard copy mailed to you, for $20, and the Kindle copy can be much less. And if you join the Kindle Club, you can even get it for free. But now I have a whole library sitting on my iPhone, right? If I was here, I'd hold up my iPhone. There's no trees, no trucks, no warehouses, but that couldn't exist without this technology. There came a point where we could do that. So now you have your whole library sitting on your phone, or in reality, even more than that. I can have the Library of Congress available. It's in the cloud, and just in seconds, I can have it on my phone and read it. Amazing, right? The time is almost instantaneous. Access to almost any book in the world, right? So Moore's law made that real, enabled it, and I have an entire library in my pocket, and it disrupted, right? Because of that, most bookstores went out of business. Barnes and Noble, Walden Books. I mean, some of them have emerged in a different form, but there's way, way less than there used to be, and they are competing now in different ways. But we used to have tons of bookstores. It was a place to go. And then there still is a place for hard books, but most people are now buying them with a Kindle or other type solution because of the cost and the ease of use, and that's the current model, right? So if we were in class for real, we'd stop and have you work on this as a group. But I'm going to introduce this assignment. This is an assignment that's due. You're welcome to work on this as a group. And so those who are here, live at the end, there'll be some time if you want to go into a breakout room or you want to talk to each other. If you want to do it individually, you can. I mean, honestly, this does work better as a group assignment, but because a snow day it's not going to be, what I want you to do is choose an application or a device from the list on the right. If you want to pick another one and you can justify it, that's okay too. I mean, this is just, representative. Hopefully not everybody will choose Instagram, but, look at something like Uber, right? How has Uber enabled us, through Moore's law or, to be able to do something we could never have done before, right? Have a, get to the airport and there's, someone who's willing to take you to your destination in Ohio, and you can just pay for it through the app, and it's ready to go. And I use Merlin Bird. That's another good one. I love that one because, and I only got into bird watching over the pandemic, but wherever I go, I'll be out and I'll start hearing some birds chirping. I'll turn on the app and it'll pick up the sound, it'll identify the bird, and then I can look off and say, oh, there it is right there. Or I can even take a picture of a bird. Sometimes it's hard because they don't come close, but it'll identify the bird for me. And I have a history of the birds I'm tracking. I'm into it probably more than anybody in the class, but I don't think I'm a fanatic. The fanatics get the massive cameras and everything. But now on my app, I think my history now is up to 70 or 80 different birds. And it's kind of a fun place. As we travel and visit our friends and family and go on hikes or whatever, it's always fun identifying a bird that we hadn't. And like I said, I'm up to 80. I think according to the movie The Big Year, there's probably at least 500 or 600 or more different species in America. So I got a long way to go. But that would never have been possible without the technology that would allow my phone to be able to pick up the sound, match it to the bird's call or a bird's picture, and identify it for me. Anyway, there's a bunch of other ones out here. I'm not going to drain them all, but you need to pick one. Tell me, write up, how has Moore's law made this app or device possible? Meaning it wasn't possible at one point, but now it is. And how has that changed how these goods or services were provided prior to the information age? Talk a little bit about how it was done before and how it's done now. Then that's part one. Part two, which app or device is your favorite? So yeah, if you want to add a missing one, you can. At this point, maybe I didn't put it here. I'm not hip enough to know what, it's changing all the time. Maybe since I did this, there's a new amazing one. And then maybe just estimate real quick, how many of these on this list have you used in the last month, right? I'm sure I'd be shocked if anyone had zero, may just be a couple. And again, this is not all of them. This is just a few. So you can see that Moore's law indirectly has really impacted you. And so this is the assignment. To time box it, it probably should take you about 20 minutes minimum, an hour maximum, right? And I will differentiate a bit on this. So please make sure you do a quality job, but this is just a class assignment. You probably get it done in 20, but don't just put like one or two words. I'd like to see a little bit of thought. And this is our class assignment for today. And again, if we were in class for real, you would have had a few minutes to do that. All right, I want to try to keep to the time schedule we have, which is to try to finish up in 10 minutes. So we're going to move on. And there's just a couple slides that we're going to go through. They're not quite as important, and then we'll give you a few minutes back. These actually, I think, came from the textbook, actually, and with a little bit in there just saying, why are you in this class? And it just talks about some of the benefits of IT. I'll kind of let you read through those. Honestly, these are less important. What we just covered is the most important part of the remaining part of our chapter. And just also emphasizing that the reason you're in this class, and actually in the textbook it says it's the most important class in the business school. Who knows? I think that's individual, but honestly, I think it is really important. That's why so many people have to take it, is because it impacts so many people. You will be using MIS, and you'll also be using Excel and some of the other tools. So I'm trying to make this class relevant for you. Sometimes you'll take a class and I won't name them, and you'll say, boy, I'll never use it again. I'll be honest. I thought for sure I was going to be using calculus, and I took a couple calculus classes. In fact, I was a really good student, and I ended up getting a B, and that's another topic for a day. It really ticked me off. I mostly got A's, but calculus, I got a B in college. I've never used calculus in all my years in business. Never, ever, ever used calculus. And I took 2 semesters of it, and it was painful. All right. I'm not saying you won't. I'm not saying don't take calculus. It was probably great for me to learn how to do calculus, but I never used it. But the things I'm teaching in this class, if I was going out in the business world again, I would be using them every day. So I'm just saying it's a relevant class, and hopefully it will be for you, and I want to try to make it relevant. Okay. And last thing, this is also in the textbook, so I popped this slide in here. Hopefully this class, when you learn MIS, is going to teach you some skills as you learn how to use an MIS. Maybe not in this class necessarily, but it's going to teach you abstract reasoning, systems thinking, collaboration, ability to experiment. As we remember, we talked about in the last class, as I was telling you, the content in this class is probably less relevant than you beginning to develop these skills, right? Can you think in systems? Like, and I'm probably not going to teach you enough about this, but hopefully you'll be able to. But like, can you look at an Uber and look at them and say, how does this system work, right? How do riders and drivers and the government connect, right? And look at how someone does a business and try to figure out what the component parts are. You might have to dive a little bit deeper into MIS, but hopefully you'll start thinking about that. I do that all the time. Whenever I go into a company or a business, I start thinking, how do their systems do this? How do the people interact? Why? I mean, Chick-fil-A, we're going to use Chick-fil-A as an example. The analysis is mine, right? I mean, in this class, all this content in the slides is mine. So you're just seeing the musings of Professor H as I go into business. But I have done a lot of thought on on Chick-fil-A because I compare it to, wow, Kentucky Fried Chicken or to some of the other competitors out there. And so I like to do that and say, how do they do that? How do their systems work? You should also learn how to collaborate or the ability to experiment. I'm just going to tell you one story. I hope you guys get this because using MIS, if done rightly, especially in the Excel area, um, I want to help you guys, and so I'm going to put this in here. And so please come to me for help. But gosh, try things out and experiment. And when I tell these stories, by the way, it's not meant to say that I'm like an amazing person, but the only way I have to illustrate is what I did and what I learned. So let's go back in a time machine to 1995. I was on a team. I was working for Price Waterhouse at the time, and we were putting in one of the very first SAP systems, not in the world, but pretty close. The new solution in SAP was R3, and it was going to be running a division of IBM in San Jose. And because I had a financial background and IT background, and I wanted to be on the team because I'd heard SAP was the thing, they put me on the team and said, Lynn, you are now in charge of configuring SAP for the finance part. They gave me no training. There was no manual, and there was no other experienced person there to help me out to learn how to do this. I had to figure it out. And what would you do, right? Like, no manual, no training. What am I going to do? Well, luckily, there were some people on my team who understood other parts of the system. There was someone who understood the sales part, someone who understood the logistics part. And I talked to them. I, still remember Janice, our SD person, all those years later. And she said, hey, here's how you log into the system. Here's how you configure it. And she kind of showed me. She said, I don't really know how it works on the finance side. That's your job, but this is how my side works. And this is how we do a transaction, but the transaction is not working right now because your finance piece isn't working. But here's some clues. And so then I sat down, and with that, and I started exploring. And I started, changing things. We had a test environment, and in the test environment, I started trying different configurations. Like, oh, Janice just showed me how to configure sales. Now I'm going to look what you have to do for finance. Oh, there it is. And I started playing with things. And eventually I figured it out. It was painful. I had long days and long weeks, but I figured it out, right? Now, I could tell you that figuring it out is no longer necessary because everything is here. But you guys do that to some degree, right? No one teaches you how to use TikTok. You kind of get on there and figure it out, right? But it's similar with an MIS. You're going to go into a company and almost nobody is going to train you. They're just going to sit you down and say, figure it out. Now, if you're smart, you'll find somebody who already knows the system, or you'll go online. But that, to me, is all part of figuring it out, and it's a skill that hopefully you'll get. You experiment, you try, and figure it out. So MIS will help you learn some of these skills. Anyway, we're down to the last 5 minutes, and I think I'm out of slides. Nope, I got one real quick. I'm going to have them so you can see them. Why MIS is one of the most important classes. This is actually not the most important, but if you do want to go to that path, I mean, I'm not here to recruit anybody. Okay, I'm not here to recruit anybody. I want you to be in the career you want to be in. But if you think you want to be in MIS, please talk to me. There are tons of jobs out there. It does kind of ebb and flow, but I've never seen, I mean, the companies I work with, yeah, there might be a 6 month period where there's a little bit too many, but very quickly it comes back to they need more people. MIS professionals always have jobs. They typically have to reinvent themselves. I've had to reinvent myself multiple times, but once you know the tools of the trade, you do pretty well. Now, maybe you'll find some exceptions to that, but I've never found a time when there hasn't been high paying jobs in my profession. I've never really been unemployed except by choice when I went on sabbatical. Every time that, if I did have a layoff or I did want to make a switch, I had a job like that. Now, you might say, well, that's you. But honestly, anyone who reasonably knows the profession at their level is going to be able to find a decent job, or at least that's been the trend. So not that that should be the factor for deciding a job, but MIS can be a great profession for you, and I would encourage you, if you like this class, maybe you consider it as a major. And what's the bottom line? It is one of them. I changed it to one of the most important for most important. Yeah, it says most important there, but it's one of the most important.